We're live.
Hey y'all, we are back. We are back for another live video. Tons of fun. Today it's just Brian and I. If you are tuning in for the jig video, that will be postponed for later. We had a scheduling conflict, basically. So instead, I don't know how this has slipped our videos at all.
It's definitely slipped.
But it's A-rigs. I kind of actually thought we already did a live on A-rigs.
No.
So I actually checked through and we don't. So today's topic is the good old controversial bait before the three magical words of controversy. The A-rig, Alabama rig. This is California, so only 3 hooks allowed. And yeah, that's what we're talking about today.
Yeah. So what
do you want to start with?
So what we're going to talk about is the way that we rig our A-rigs and how we set them up.
And everything. What we're throwing at, what we're looking at.
Yeah.
All of that stuff.
Now,
if you have questions along the way, obviously, ask away.
So in your opinion, what can you throw an A-rig for to what kind of fish, right? Like what can we go after for A-rig?
A-rig can be, you can throw it towards fish that are stuck to the bottom.
No, what species?
You can throw it for any species. I don't think I've caught trout, I've caught crappie, I've caught bluegill, I've caught bass, all 3 species of bass.
Striper.
Caught striper. I don't know if I've got a, oh, nope. Got a catfish.
On an A-rig.
Clear Lake. On an A-rig.
Hitch?
It's just a ball of bait that's out there.
Hitch?
I haven't caught a hitch from it.
Northern pike. Is it northern pike? Pike minnow.
Pike minnow.
Pike minnow.
Yeah, pike minnow.
I've got some big pike minnow, like 8-pounders on an A-rig.
Yeah. Elau. What's happening, Elau? Kurgan's checking in. What's happening in Kurgan? And Matlock's checking in. Evening.
Guys.
So basically, it is a one-stop shop to catch anything that was related to bait.
Yes.
And in this, setup-wise,
so you're going to throw an A-rig, and you're talking about it's a great bait for if they're targeting like bait fish, right?
Yeah.
So are you talking it's more of a fall, winter, spring bait, or just all the time?
You can throw it all the time, but there's definitely times of the year that it is not as effective as other baits at certain times. There are certain times, like when they really suck to the bottom, you can get them to come up and look at it, but it's hard to get them to actually eat it sometimes.
Okay.
How about you? Were you throwing it 24/7? What are you doing?
Well, I will throw it all the time, but there's key things that I want when I am throwing it. For instance, cloud cover, possibly, dirtier water, maybe, or like wind chop. Like if there's some wind blowing, I feel like in those type of criteria, and it doesn't have to be all 3 at one time, just one of them has to happen. Something has to happen. Yeah. I feel like they work better.
If it's post front, bluebird skies, and no wind, like it's glass, that is definitely a time that an A-rig is hard to get bit.
Yeah.
And that doesn't matter. Like it's just, and clear water on top of that. Clear water on top of that. Definitely, you put those elements together, and it's a tough one.
Did you see Elau's comment?
Elau said he had a lesson a few weeks back.
Yeah.
When he got on the boat with you.
Yeah. With Obi-Wan.
Obi-Wan Colling.
Yeah. I gave somebody else a lesson too. Yeah, probably one of his best days throwing an A-rig at Clear Lake. We put 25 pounds on the boat. Yeah. That was Paul. I tried to get Paul to come over here today and talk a little bit.
Yeah, it was a bit last minute with having
Yeah,
to
yeah.
ad lib for the jig. The jig video, if anybody is tuning in for the jig video, that will likely be the February 19th or later. The next 2 weeks of lives is Choose It or Lose It. And then Elau and Matlock are going to jump on and they're going to talk about their BAM experience.
Shasta.
At Shasta as co-anglers in the BAM Pro-Am. Or is it Pro-Am or? Yeah, Pro-Am.
So, Paul, you've been fishing A-rigs for a while, or it really was like last March you're like breaking into an A-rig. Yeah. And have you been throwing it consistently now, like since you had that day? Just a question for you. So A-rigs, what A-rig do you go and buy? There's a bunch out on the market, right? Like you can.
So personally, I think for both of us, I only buy one A-rig, and that's the Yum Umbrella Flash Mob Junior. That's the only one that I buy. Just a simplicity thing. Do other A-rigs work? Does the Bailey rig work? Does all those work? Yeah, absolutely. But for me, if I'm going to throw it, I'm going to throw the Flash Mob Junior, and I'm just not going to mess with any of the other ones. Yes. Do you go through them, like break wires every once in a while? Yeah. What's the number one way to break wires? Boat flip fish is probably what breaks wires the most, is boat flipping.
We boat flip fish a lot, like on it, but like,
and then this was having like two giants pull against it.
This was a A-rig I was throwing when I caught that 4-pounder. I've been throwing it for a while though.
Yeah,
but
it's used and abused.
Yeah, but that 4-pounder that I caught at Berryessa out of the grass, it destroyed it. Like,
I will say that as like head split wise, I think I've had maybe one out of the 20 plus 30 that I've had that have a head split to it. Almost always it just breaks the wire at the first kink. I don't think I think maybe once ever split a head.
No, I split it that head.
Yeah.
I've broken off wires.
Yeah.
You know,
it's a habit, or not a habit, but it's a nature of the beast kind of thing.
Yeah, when you're throwing it over and over and over and over and over again, like for me, I'll throw a A-rig a lot. When you start throwing them and you can tell your wires are not holding out like they were, you probably should retire that one.
Yeah.
Before you hook that fish, right?
Yeah, that's your number one key is you make a cast and then the wire comes in and it's bent in, you bend it out a little bit, you make a cast and it bends back in again. Or you get hung up on the bottom and it bends in.
Yeah.
And then, or you're skipping the bottom and it bends. Like if it's bending back easily, then that wire is about to go. That's your heads up. And if you're in a tournament, you change it out. If you're not in a tournament, you might still run it.
Yeah.
Find out what happens.
Elau says he throws the Yum Flash Mob Junior just like us.
Yeah.
And it's cheaper for him because he spends all of his money on jigs.
Yeah, they used to be like $11 or something like that. I think they're like 12 or 13.
I think they're $13 just for this part. And there's some guys in the club that will buy this and then just
put jig heads on it.
Put jig heads on it just the way it is. Because when you get it out of there, they have snaps on them. And you can just snap them on. I don't do that.
Yeah, so what I do is a little more detailed than he does.
Yeah.
And I take number 3 hyper wires, split rings, and I take the snaps off, leave the swivels on, and I put those hyper wires, and then I put the jig head direct connect onto those. So I have no snaps to come apart. Those snaps do work fine, but every once in a while they do scatter. They decide to leave the chat. If you put the hyper wires on there, I have not had any of this stuff fail. I will actually bend this hook out before anything.
Yeah, or break a wire.
Or break a wire off before anything. Other than that, everything else that's in this whole line is great connect. The hook that I use itself is the Dirty Jigs Matt Allen swim bait head. The package looks like that. There's a big version of it here. So the reason why I'm throwing this specific hook myself is this hook right here does not break. It'll bend out, but it takes a lot to bend out. So there are different hooks that will snap.
Yeah.
I do not want a hook that is snapped. I have broke a hook off before in a fish and just came back with a stub. And then if you go with a lighter gauge, they'll bend out. So if two fish hit it and then they go against each other, it just stretches the hook out.
Yeah.
You lose the fish that way. I don't have any hook issues with this. We've literally pulled up truck tires at Clear Lake where we dropped the retriever down in there, hooked into the wires of the A-rig and pulled up a full rim and tire truck tire.
But we did go through some A-rigs that trip.
We went through a lot of A-rigs that trip.
But the A-rig bite was so good.
It was worth it.
That we didn't really care. Like we were catching 3 to 4 pound fish so fast, so much that it was.
Before it was easy to catch 3 to 4s at Clear Lake.
Yeah.
It was only, I think it was like 4 or 5 years ago, 6 years ago. But this hook, and then so there's another reason why I use this hook specifically. Now, if you pay attention to this, actually, I'll show you on this.
You just got everything.
It's a chandelier. It's gonna hang up everything. So if you look at the bottom wires on this, okay. So as you bring this across, there is nothing along this wire or the split ring or anything that can grab a rock. It's all streamlined. So there's nothing to it that you can actually like get hung up on. So when you're dragging this through the rocks, the baits will keep it upright, and then you just keep it swimming through the rocks and it'll skip along the rocks. If you do get hung up, it's usually just the head is kind of barely wedged and you give it a little pop, or you get over it a little bit and give it a pop, as long as you don't slam into it, like give it full hook set, and it crawls right out. Other hooks with other weight locations will bite into that and jam itself harder. And it's harder to skip the ground, basically.
Well, would you say that the way that some of the other hooks, if the eye of the where you tie onto the hook, it's higher on the bait?
It's about the eye placement is what it is.
And so, like if it was going, it would actually hit and then fold up, right?
Yeah, if the eye was off the top of the head, it has this weight hanging off the front. So now when the weight hits, it picks the body up. And when it picks that body up,
you don't have it.
I thought I had a solo one. When it picks that body up, it kicks that hook point up. It's no longer able to skip along. It's going to kick that hook point up, which all it takes then is a rollover. And you have the hook locked into whatever it was.
Yeah. Paul says he's found that throwing and waiting for it to sink and getting it hung up, he's having troubles with that.
That is if you're dragging off the bottom, that is a thing. You are going to cast it out, let it hit the bottom, and then do that. The only way around that is forward-facing sonar, which I know Paul has, is watching it on its way down and knowing when it's going to get close, and then
moving it.
When it's getting close to where it is, like let's say this is the bottom. When it's getting close, you start slow rolling it, or slack, instead of slack line, hold taut line, and it'll start to actually
swing
in, and the tails will start dragging, and then you can skip the bottom and keep it going.
Yeah.
But that's the only way, is to actually watch it.
Yeah. And have a retriever.
And have a retriever, as long as you're not fishing too deep that your retriever can't reach it. Unless
some of you guys have the older retriever that
Yeah, the one
our dads have that we.
the one I used to have access to.
Yeah, at some point in time, I'm gonna acquire it.
Right.
I hope he's not watching right now, but I'm gonna acquire that one because that flat works.
So the retriever we use is a pole, basically an extendable, collapsible pole, where it's a telescopic pole, and on the end of it, it has a screw to it, and you can actually slide the line down into it, and then that screw gets in and wraps around these, so it like basically grabs it like this, and then you can pull the whole thing up.
Yeah.
And usually, whatever it's attached to is strong enough that it can actually you can actually pick the whole thing up and whatever it's attached to.
Yeah.
Again, like I said, we were picking up tires and stuff. The other one that he was talking about has little metal tines that you could actually grab the eye of this bait with, and then you'd pull it up. It's basically the same thing. You're pulling the whole bait.
Yeah. Those poles work great. Clear Lake work great. The east side of Berryessa, Delta. If you don't have one of those poles, I 100% recommend you going to buy one. I bought mine from Amazon. It was like 40 to 50, maybe $60. And you figure this is $14. This is an A-rig, probably one of these. Then these are the cheaper ones, cost around $22 to $25. So you save.
Yeah, just saving 2 of these A-rigs that you would have normally broke off already pays for itself, and that's not counting any other baits that you retrieve with it, whether it's mega bass, jerk baits, or what have you.
So when you do,
but any lure retriever is recommended of any kind, basically, that you can get down there and knock it free.
When you're rigging your A-rig, you're talking, you only do the split rings on 3 of them, right?
Yeah, so I only do split rings on 3. So I take the snaps off, and then I put split rings for the ones with the jig heads. On the top, they're called CPS, they're owner CPS springs. It's the medium size, not the small, so ignore the S. Get the medium sized in the CPSs, and all this is a little screw lock. And actually, they have a cute little picture on here. It's a little screw lock that you just thread onto your eye, and then that right there will grab a hold of the bait and let it where you can pull against it, right? So I'm adding 0 weight to the top of this A-rig, but I'm able to hold a dummy bait to it. Now, here's the other thing that works about the CPS. You can basically clock the bait so that it'll always be right side up while it's swimming. So like you can take this and like I can untwist it. Let's just say I put it in upside down. You can see that bait's upside down. It cannot move. It like self-locks itself. Even though I twist it more, the body only moves so much. And that way you can always have the right color up and it runs right side up.
And you typically run all the same colors, typically.
Have you been going away from that? I used to.
What made you change?
It doesn't matter. But I'll still kind of do it in patterns. I will float between 3 different colors on an A-rig, and really what I want to know is which one is active. Now, once I figure out what one is active, I'm going to change them out to match the one that's working.
Yeah.
And then if I go back to not getting bit again, then I'll start swapping out singles until I figure out what color they may have moved to if they didn't just pull completely off.
All right. So you're setting up these A-rigs. This isn't something that you set up on your boat, right? Like,
no, I do these at home.
You do these at home. How do you store them?
I store them with. Actually, I'll grab it. Why don't you show what you do for the dummy baits and what you do split ring wise?
All right. So again, I use Flash Mob Juniors just like everybody else. I use the dirty jigs. I really don't care what color the heads they are. These are Tennessee shad. These are a 1/4 inch or a 1/4 ounce. I like the 1/4 ounce, especially right now because we're fishing deeper. But I do have different weights for my A-rigs. And then I'm a little different than James. I use oval split rings, number 4s. Those ones right there. And then when I rigged mine, I bought some split ring pliers and I go at it. So like this A-rig, I'll take off all the bottom 3 of these snaps. I'll take them completely off. And then I'll put my snap rings on there. For instance, like this one, this one is the single. The bottom 2, I put a single split ring on there. And the middle one, I put a double split ring on there. Why? I just want it a little further back than the other ones. Just preference. But then with the tops, when I'm finished with my A-rig, so I'll put, like this one's a light A-rig. I could burn this over a lot of grass.
It shallow, like a
keep it shallow. But this guy in the club, he uses all these, and he just pinches the bait in that.
So he just basically threads the nose like your nose hook in a drop shot. He nose hooks it through the split or through the snap, leaving the snap on there,
and then snapping the snap back and then going for it. It works for me. Like
there's enough, like even if you get short struck, it doesn't rip off.
Yep.
The reason why I do the split rings is just for the right side up. As far as, I mean, either way, they don't have a hook in it.
Yeah.
So that part's not important. They'll last on there just as long. If the only thing that you have is it might not be right side up sometimes.
I don't have a problem. I don't care.
But it doesn't. It's still a bait swimming through the water either way.
Yeah.
Fish don't care. There's a giant set of wire off the front of that, so it doesn't matter.
Big John asked, do we run the same size baits for all of them? No. Typically, we're going to run. Light's horrible on that. Is the 3.3s and the 2.8s. These are going to be the teasers, the 2.8s, and the 3.3s are going to be the 3 baits on the bottom.
So the top two with no hooks are usually one size smaller of Kitex than whatever we're running on the bottom. If you go to Clear Lake, we'll dip into the 3/8s and 3/3s because there's just bigger forage there.
Yeah,
and there's certain times of the year that you want a bigger forage.
The 3/3s and then the 3/8s and the 3/3s will be the top, and that's how, like at Clear Lake, for sure.
Yeah.
Some of the like Delta stuff like that, I'll throw bigger baits on there. But those Clearwater lakes, I like to throw the little smaller ones. I do, because Berry S is such a good fishery. I will throw a 3.8 in the middle on this one, right? A little bigger of the bait, further back than the other ones.
Just give them variety.
Give them a little bit of variety, and sometimes those are the ones that they eat. D.D. Basson says Tackle Warehouse has a 1 pound lead with chains, and it saved him a ton of money. That's what he uses.
100-pound braid. I'm guessing that the 1 pound weight's on a 100-pound braid.
1 pound weight and a 100-pound braid.
I do know some people that, like, when you break a rod,
cut.
They just cut it to the first eye, and then put a reel on it, and then that is their lure retrieve rod.
Yeah.
So it's you just reel it up to that one eye, and then you hook that lure retriever to it, click the button on your old reel that's not quite working right, and send it down there, and then you have the rod. You can actually work with it, pop stuff free. If it's something that's deeper than the pull style.
Yeah. It's a way.
You had asked
how you store it.
How I store it. So this is a 3700 box, and you can see in that 3700 box that there are multiple A-rigs in there. So if you look, what I've done is I took one of these dividers and I cut a square into it and I shove the heads into it and it holds the body. So now to take it off, all you do is hold the wires down and walk this off. You see the square? And then now I can separate these out. Now I stack them so that they're stacked body wise. And then just squelch all through together. Fit it through the hole. Make sure it lines up right side so that it's not laying sideways in the box. Get it past the blades, but before the back ones. And now this thing's holding there. You can do whatever you want with them. And then when you lay them back in your box, you just have to battle the blades a little bit and the hooks. But I have all 3 hooks already on there. These are 1/8 ounce. Lately, I've been switching to heavier ones, but we can get into that later.
Yeah.
But then I just put this in one of these compartments, and I'm done. And I can keep up to 5 of them in one of these little squares. And then after that, I got to move it. I got to grab another one of these little squares. 6 is a little tight. It's hard to get them in and out of the holes. 5 works just fine. And if it's still too tight at 5, make your square a little bit bigger.
So what I do is when I build them, I will take the plastic that they're in, and I'll just put them back in it. Right, like this one, I wrote on the package 1/8 head, so I know exactly what size it is, and I can just open it up, bring it out, and it's ready to go. I put my baits on there and go catching them. Something that I do, and I'm sure James does the same thing. Things to think about is I like to spread these out. If you notice the difference between the A-rigs, this was way smaller. This one's spread out.
You're looking at
way more
angle from where the head is, overall width of flare.
Yes. I like it more like this. So I'm not going to just pull and bend it out there. I'm actually going to put my thumb on it, like 3/4 of an inch, 1/2 inch away, and then bend it out to where it's not, I'm not pulling on the wire next to the head. I want it to be out here. I don't want it to be bending right up in here. I feel like that's how I've had them break.
Yeah, like if you look at mine, it's already bent out, right? So you can see how far down the wire it is before I bend it. And then the original crimp is way up here.
Yeah.
Bending it, so wire tension breaks from sharp kink points.
Yeah.
So if you can give it a longer radius and get it away from any other kink points, that wire will last longer.
Yeah.
Than if you just take the original wire one or original wire kink and bend it out.
Yeah.
That's what he's saying.
And then I have an empty box that has no dividers in it, and I just line them up on how I want them in there for the weights. I put all my spare stuff in there, so they're all set up just like this, ready to roll. When I want one, I pull it out, hook it up, and I will tell you that if I fish a tournament, it's going to be a brand new A-rig.
Or one that you trust.
It's probably going to be brand new because I'm going to trust that one.
Yeah, I'll run one that I trust. But again, it's back to watching the wires and how much you have to readjust those wires.
I've thrown A-rigs where these ones even like these, the flashers start moving on them up and down on the wire.
Yeah. And when those move on me, so you'll notice these will slowly slide down. I don't think I have one on here. I don't have any that are. Every once in a while, they'll slowly slide down. I'll push it back to where it is, and then I'll just kink the wire on the bottom side, right on that bottom, so that it can't slide anymore. You can recrimp the top crimps, but I just kink it so it doesn't anymore, and then move on.
Yeah,
it's just a flasher. It's not that important.
No, I could take them off.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think that you need to take them off. But there's sometimes that I really think those flashers really attract, right? Like A-rig has a huge draw power, right? Like you could draw fish out from multiple areas, maybe even just to look at it. That was one of the things that I would do at New Melones, especially when the water was low and there was a lot of wood. Pre-fishing, and I was using forward-facing sonar, I'd throw it across the wood and I'd just burn it in and look to see what came up out of that wood, to look at what that A-rig, to see what fish were there, what the size were. And I tell you that throwing an A-rig, this is a big bait coming through the water. So on your forward-facing sonar, you see this coming through the water.
Yeah, it's easy
If
to
you
find.
have a fish that is the same size or bigger, that's a good fish.
Yeah,
coming for
I've
it.
definitely had some fish that dwarfed an A-rig. I mean, you're talking, this is almost 8-inch spread top to bottom, right?
Yeah.
And then you get a fish that's following this that looks on sonar like twice the size, like height wise, as your A-rig, and who knows how long. Like, I can't imagine how big that fish is.
Yeah.
They rarely eat, but they definitely get you excited while you're watching.
Yeah, when they're following you. Oof. I will tell you too, having the right rod for it.
Before we get into rods.
Okay, before we get into rods.
Let's wrap up, because that's going to not wrap up, but we'll get some comments on there, because the
All
rod's
right,
going to
so-
break in a whole another section.
So Big John asked, how often do you get the teasers bit, the dummy baits?
So I will occasionally
It
get
happens.
the teasers bit, and you can tell because like none of these tails are pulled. There's no marks or anything like that. The other thing is like you kind of get a feeling for when you pull into them what it felt like. Like, you know, like that should have been a hook. That should have been a. And then the other thing is they will hit it hard enough, they will rip a teaser off.
Yeah.
If they rip a teaser off, there's two things to that. Either A, they want smaller baits, or B, they're eating from the top down.
Yeah.
So that means you're underneath them. So if they're able to go after the thing, go higher in the column and go faster, or go faster. Either one, either go higher or faster or both. But make them have to eat from the bottom instead of eating from the top. The weird thing about that is Clear Lake. I don't understand it on Clear Lake, but you could be dredging the bottom with this and they'll always pick up the bottom ones and they leave the teasers alone.
Yeah. And
it's kind of interesting. Like Clear Lake fish are different. They're just kind of a little odd. Gets asked if there's weedless jig heads. I'll be honest with you, this is pretty, with this style head, I can throw this through, I've literally thrown it through Thule's, loose Thule's, but I've thrown it through Thule's at Delta.
I will tell you that I will go to like the east side of Berryessa, and all those trees, I'm throwing it through the trees.
Yeah.
Bumping the trees, throwing it through the trees. I fished with a buddy there, and I was hucking it through the trees, and he was like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "Well, I got a retriever.
Yeah.
I'll go after it.
Yeah.
I don't care."
Yeah, I will not afraid to send it in the trees and bump them as a way, as long as you have this on a slow, steady, or not slow, steady, but one steady pace.
Yeah.
It will usually, like you hit a branch, it'll roll off of it. Like the wires push itself off of it. And then again, back to the head style. It's kind of almost like a spinnerbait in that aspect.
Yes.
But
like if you have two like big trees and you throw it right in the middle between them.
Yeah.
And you could, in shallower water without forward facing sonar, you could see the fish in clear water shoot out after that. It is amazing.
Yeah, it has that draw power. Paul asked or says, you don't realize how fast you're retrieving an A-rig until you see it on forward scan. That is true.
Yeah. 100%.
I think a lot of people who have troubles with A-rig are more than likely reeling it too fast. They don't realize how slow you have to go to keep it on the bottom.
Or how fast you got to go.
You can compensate with that with weights. Make it so that you can still reel a little faster, that you're not sleeping.
Yeah.
And it stays down, but you can only this has a lot of lift to it. So while you're reeling it, it's going to lift.
Yeah.
You can only do so much with weights that's on there.
Yeah.
Coach Miguel, will the Open tournament be on Berryessa this year? It will be, and it'll be the Saturday before Thanksgiving.
Yep.
It's always from now on going to be the Saturday before Thanksgiving, and it'll probably be at. Well, we're not sure on venue yet, but it'll still be the Saturday before Thanksgiving.
Yep.
So you guys can put that in your calendars.
And it's that in November. That's a great time to throw A-rigs. And I think the last time we had an Open out there, A-rig was a.
It was a player. It was it was basically A-rig and 6-inch swim bait.
Yeah, it was a player.
What a lot of people were throwing. Two Stands Fishing asks if do we ever read the chat? Yes, we read the chat for sure. Camo Joe, what's happening, Camo Joe?
What's going on, buddy?
What's happening, Marlon? So we're gonna get into rods.
We could get in rods. We could get in retrieves. We could get. There's a lot.
Let's get into rods because I think rod is actually really important when it comes to A-rig.
It 100% is.
I think rod matters more than retrieve because you won't know how to modify things if you don't have the right rod. So rod itself, I actually brought my rod. This is.
I did not. So I throw the same rod.
Yeah, we both end up throwing the same rod. We had different. So this is a Shimano Zodius 7.5 heavy. This is the same rod that Tactical Bassman recommends. So it is a heavy, and it is, I think most people throw too heavy of a rod on an A-rig, and that's how they're missing a lot of the bites and a lot of the clues that they don't know. If you pay attention to this rod, it is more of kind of a, like you can see the bend on it. It's moderate, but it still has a good tip to it. So it's kind of almost like a halfway point between a jig rod and a crankbait rod.
Yeah.
So it's still got a tip to it, but it breaks far into the blank with that bend, and it shuts off like down almost near the rod or near the reel is where it shuts off. So the reason for that is,
you want to take it? No, go ahead.
No?
Go ahead. No, I know, but
so the reason for that is, it gives you the sensitivity that you can have off of the tip. So on that sensitivity that's on there, okay, when a fish comes up behind this and washes it out, or what we call washing out, where the fish comes in and like swoons at it and then last minute says, nah, I'm out, and bounces because it's too fast, too slow, wrong color, wrong size, whatever, it gives you a clue. You can actually feel this go light when you have that softer tip. If you have a really hard
broomstick. Yeah, you're saying the wrong
there's
words.
going to be some wrong.
If you have stiff,
if
it's a really stiff rod,
if you have too much rod,
guess he said off a hard tip.
You aren't going to know when that washout happens.
Yeah.
Because your rod's not going to unload because it's already like it's dragging its weight. You're not going to feel that unload.
I've caught a lot of fish. I caught a lot of fish on that. Hey, it went light. You need to be doing something right now. Like when you feel that.
You'd be amazed how many times all you felt is it went light. Like you feel like it just pushes a little bit. And that fish is actually swimming with it. It's in its mouth and it's slack like this.
Yeah.
And you feel the resistance of the other 4 baits, but you don't feel the resistance of that one. And then you just lean into it and set that hook, and then boom, they're there. And Clear Lake is notorious for that bite.
Yeah.
If you cannot feel that difference, you're going to miss a lot of fish.
Yes.
So, like I said, people using too much rod, step it back to lighter. The rod that I throw for 1/8 ounce weights, like the really light one, is actually a 7.2 medium or 7.2 heavy X Pride. It's got a short handle, but
Ate it.
it's super light. Like the whole thing's like a lot more crankbait,
Yeah.
but I can feel everything that's going on with it. I can tell you if I ticked rocks, ticked weeds, ticked wood, or if I got washed out. Those things matter a lot. So a lot of people who said I can't get bit on an A-rig, that's your other thing. Besides the reeling too fast and you're too high in the column, and you're just not, you're getting bit. You just don't know you're getting bit.
And I'll tell you, like when I fished with Paul had a Dobbin 795.
Yes. Oh, that's what I was going to get into that. So with the softer rod than the stiffer one, but you still have that sensitivity. Okay. How you compensate for the softer rod and being able to still put the screws to them and still be able to have the strength of the backbone is you eliminate stretch of line.
Yeah.
So eliminating stretch of line is I use 50-pound Max Quattro is the braid that I'll use, or I'll run 50-pound regular braid. Doesn't
Power Pro.
Power Pro.
Power Pro
is the Power Pro Max Quattro. I'll use 50-pound on that. It's a little bit smaller profile. It's the 40 profile, but 55-pound or 50-pound, sorry, strength. And then I'll do a 20-pound leader where when I'm doing the leader, I literally just stretch it 3 arm lengths or whatever
So
I feel like.
about 15 foot.
15 foot or whatever.
Well, about 3 arm lengths is about that, right?
Yeah, 15 to 20 foot, somewhere in that ballpark.
So you throw the braid to fluoro, correct?
Blade to fluoro. He throws braid to mono, also
Or
20-pound.
Yes, 20-pound mono.
There will be a little bit more. It's minuscule, but there will be a little bit more lift with mono.
Yeah.
Than with the fluoro. Now, what he was getting into that reminded me of that is Paul's throwing a 795 Fury.
Yeah.
That rod will work, although it is too stiff of a rod.
Well, hold on.
That rod will work if you use mono or fluoro, no braid. It will, the line itself, the stretch in the line will soften that rod up.
Or if you run braid, a bigger A-rig, right?
Or if you're
like one of the
A-rig.
hog farmers or something that has like multiple wires coming off of it, a heavier A-rig, that might be a better rod for that.
Yeah, because even though the rod isn't soft enough for a regular A-rig, if you put a heavier A-rig on it, it does load that tip enough so you can feel the washout.
Yes.
The whole point of it is you're basically creating a balance point. I am a braid person, so I'm going to just pick a lighter rod to compensate for it.
So I throw the same rod with mono, same braid, but mono. But I do have another A-rig rod that I use, and it is a softer rod. It was a Shimano X
Edge
or something like that. I don't even know what
they don't make it anymore.
It's obsolete.
It's also like a 7.2-ish heavy.
Yeah, love the rod, but it's more it's
a jig rod.
Well, I would say it's more of a cranking rod because it bends way farther down into it. But that rod, I have found that I won't run a leader on it.
Yeah, because it's softer.
It's softer. So I'm going to run straight braid all the way to my A-rig. And
still run my 7.2 heavy X Pride that is softer. I still run a leader on it.
Yeah. But what's it matter? You're swimming wires.
Yeah, as far as whether they can see the braid or not, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. So I really don't care, but I've caught one of my best fish on an A-rig at Clear Lake on that other rod.
Yeah.
Which was at 813.
So the other thing about that is when you do get bit and you do lean into them, the reason why you have that crankbait style rod, so you have the jiggish kind of tip to it, and then you have the crankbait backbone, is so that you could just lean against them and just keep tension on them. And there's nowhere, they're not going anywhere. These hooks, you have just enough backbone to put these single hooks into the fish, and then you have that that crankbait kind of body to the rod to be able to, no matter what they throw or hash around, they can't get the momentum of this big thing slashing around on them to unhook themselves.
Right.
Because they just can't, they can't cause that whip section when you have like that crankbait. That's why crankbait rods work.
Right.
It's because they can't get the whip to it to unhook those trebles. But that's where the right rod can make a big difference. So basically, if you have a guy who's saying, I hook a fish, as soon as they jump or as soon as they turn around and surge, it comes undone. Your rod's too stiff. Typically.
Yeah.
Typically. Your rod's too stiff. I mean, it could be your drag's tight for the surge part. But typically it's your rod. You can change your rod and you can keep those fish that you were losing. And that's kind of true for all baits, but specifically this one.
All right. So we're like 45 minutes into it. So I'm going to get into some tricks that I do A-rig fishing. So one of the things that Berryessa that works really good for me is, and using forward facing, it's something that Tackle Bassin does too, is that flex when they flex the wires, right? Like what I'm talking about is just a twitch with the handle. These wires flex in like it's running, right? Like
it
like
makes
a bait ball.
It makes the bait change, or makes the ball change.
Makes the ball change. So like I'll throw it out there and I'll be watching it on forward facing sonar. If I have a couple fish following it and I can see fish that are underneath it that it's about to get to, I'll pop it right then when those fish are following, because those fish are following. These fish sees the bait and then sees those fish right behind it. And when it flexes, they're like, oh my God, I got to get it right now. I've caught so many fish doing that.
There are days that don't do that, though.
Days that it doesn't work, but that is one of those things.
But that's definitely a trigger.
It does trigger the fish. They do jump on it, and I'll sit there and hammer them over and over and over doing it. And there's sometimes I've just jigged it. I've dropped it just.
Yeah, where they're following it, they're not going to commit. Like you can kind of tell their body style or their behavior. They're not gonna commit. So keep reeling or twitching, and it's not changing anything. You just kill it.
Yep.
Just kill it, and you'll watch them, especially spots. You'll see that bait starting to go down, and then that fish just goes down with them. And then you either pick it back up or twitch it, pop it.
Yep. Start burning it up.
You're gonna have enough time with enough different fish that you can figure out how to get them to go if you really want to.
Yeah. And that, I'm telling you, like Berryessa, that is a thing. It works. Both of them, twitching it or just killing it, right? Letting it free spool straight down and then burn it up.
Yeah.
I've caught multiple fish doing that.
So if that gets into, let's get into where are we throwing this?
Okay.
What are the situations we're throwing this? We had talked about earlier, we want wind, we want clouds. Water clarity doesn't really matter unless there's no winds or clouds. You want something to break that water up, because for some reason they don't want to eat a big giant wired bait when they have incredible eyesight.
Yeah.
And then the other things that you're going to be looking for when you have those situations is you can use this as a spinnerbait.
Yeah.
You can use this as a dredging bait.
Yeah.
And then you're looking for rock, wood, like all your normal structures that you're putting it on. And then you also have your suspending across the top, where your fish are just suspended, sitting or eating up, basically. Yeah. Like
it's
something like that.
Great search bait too, right? Like just to find out where the fish are, and then if they're not eating it, then you could change to other things, right? Like, but just to find, if you're going out and just trying to find where the fish are, especially this time of year right now, throw an A-rig. Even if they don't eat it, you're gonna see them. You're gonna figure it out,
and you're gonna see. It's assuming you have forward scan. you're gonna see what the size of the fish is in that area. You can use it as a search bait, basically. Same thing as a glide bait.
Another great area to throw it is like Shasta. Not Shasta, Lake Sonoma.
Yeah.
Lake Sonoma, all those trees, throw an A-rig through those trees, all around them.
And you'd be surprised how many come off of the trees. Like you'll be like, oh, there's none. Like you scan through the trees. I don't see any fish. And then you throw an A-rig through there and all of a sudden, boom, they pop out from basically from the trunks, the tree branches and all that stuff. It's ridiculous to watch. The Rooster says he's going to Barrie this weekend.
What day are you going to go?
Yeah, I'm not. I have work this weekend.
Yeah.
He might be going.
I don't have a fishing partner
work
this weekend. Yeah.
A-rig works right now on A-rig.
The only bad thing that's going to rain.
The video that just dropped, the rain's a good thing for A-rig though.
Yes, it is.
The video that just dropped at 4:00 today, you can say there's A-rig fishes on there or catches on there. Other than that, if you're going to Barrie this weekend, throw a Ned rig, throw a jig, throw something on the bottom.
Do you throw a Ned rig?
I try not to throw a Ned rig.
Should you have thrown a Ned rig last weekend?
No, because I learned.
What'd you learn?
Because I already knew Ned rig was going to work.
Oh.
You were already catching them.
That's
so
true.
I need to throw it too.
That's true.
Got to learn somehow. The only way you learn is by doing different things.
True. You're going. Getsy said he's going to, with Elau this week on Saturday.
Ooh, look at that with Elau. And then the other thing is rock points for Barrie right now. I mean, if you watch the video at 4:00, you already know this.
Even deep water points.
They're schooled up on deep main lake.
If you have
a
point coming all the way out and then it's like 20, 30 foot and then it drops off, I'll throw that A-rig out deep and bring it right up that point. Yeah. And you're gonna catch some fish.
They commit on it. Like if you have, see if we can do a little demonstration. Let's say that point comes out, right? And then it hits here and then it drops off. If you throw that A-rig out here and it falls down, as you're coming up to this crack line or this peak line, if you can time it so that your bait is at this peak line as it's coming up, if there's a fish around, they're eating it.
Yeah, it's going to get eaten.
They will basically use that peak line as a pinch point, and they will eat it.
It's all about angles.
It's all about angles. If you did watch the, again, 4:00 video, the first, or the 3 pounds, like 290 something, 3-pound fish, that's exactly how I caught that fish, was kept throwing it off of a break and then bringing it up to that peak.
Yeah.
And as soon as it got to that peak point, you saw that fish that was out here just boom, just straight necked it. Yeah. It actually knocked me slack enough that I had to turn a lot of my body before I actually hooked up with it while I was reeling.
Yeah. If you guys are looking at rods or something like that, like the suggestions that we made, take that number. If you don't want to buy that rod, feel the bend of it, and then go look at other rods. It is a $200 rod.
Yeah. If you want to find a more budget version of that, find the 7.5 heavy on the shelf, and then bend it, play with it, do whatever it is, and then go compare that to your favorite brand. If it's Phoenix, if it's Abu Garcia, if it's whatever.
What's that other rod I have, that long one?
Your Shimano SLX? No, that's your swim bait rod.
Yes, but I've thrown A-rig on that and caught fish.
Yeah, that's the 710 or 711 SLX, heavy, or extra heavy.
Yeah, $100. And
it's one of the swim bait rods for the SLX line.
Yeah, $100. That other rod that I use, I think I paid like $60 to $80 for it. And I've been using it.
Edge.
I've been using it for years, throwing A-rig.
Yeah.
I did have the eyes redone on it.
Yeah.
Went over to Todd's Rods and had them.
Yeah.
redo it.
I got currently my light A-rig rod is missing an eye, and I need to get that fixed before Clear Lake.
Where are you gonna go?
I'm gonna go to Todd's Rods because that's the only place that I go to for
It's like
eyes.
$10.
And I usually just hand them 20 and tell them keep the change.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't do it myself.
Will you throw A-rigs through docks?
I will throw A-rigs through anything. I don't care. I'm gonna treat it like a spinnerbait.
Yeah.
And if it gets hung up, I go get it.
I will tell
for
you,
the most part, though, it doesn't really get hung up, though.
if I had a choice to throw a spinnerbait or an A-rig, it's going to be an A-rig all day long. Like
Unless you're at the Delta.
No.
Unless you're in the slop.
Yeah, slop. But like what I was talking about,
it does work on the Delta and not just Strait.
that 795 that Paul was throwing, we were throwing A-rigs for 3 days. You know, when you have a heavy rod and a heavy bait that you're throwing, it gets after you throwing that all day, right? Like you're going to be sore. So, and I think Paul, I gave Paul one of my other A-rig rods, and he was like, "Oh my God, I could do this all day."
Yeah, that would be the other reason for that rod is it is not as tiring if you get a rod that is, like he's saying, it definitely tires you out.
That's lighter, that works for the rod. Like,
it's the casting,
the casting
amount
distance.
of power that you have to put into that rod to get it to load enough to cast, versus these rods that are more like crankbait rods. You just kind of lob it, like you don't actually power. You just kind of like lay it back, and then it just sends it back out there.
Yeah, because you do more of a sidearm cast when you're doing it typically.
Yeah, my distance, I can cast overhand on most days. There's some days that I can't, but like my side swing, like you just kind of like swing it. I can get a lot farther distance on there, and all I'm doing is you just loading the rod and then letting the rod do the work.
Me being before I had my boat and being on the back of people's boat, or me standing with you, typically I'm overhead.
Yeah,
I'm gonna put it over the head and just shoot it.
Backhand it sometimes. I just can't cast very far when I backhand it. If I try to like throw off my left.
Yeah. One thing to know is never really set the hook, right?
No, just lean into it.
Just lean into it. And then also, if you're leaning into it, like you just lean into it. If you're hitting the wood, if you're hitting the bottom or something like that, if you lean into it and it snags, just wait, drive over to it and lift it up. It's going to come free.
Yeah, give it little pops.
Little pops. It's going to come free.
That is one of the keys. Yeah, that you hit on. If you full power it, you're going to kick this hook, kick it sideways, jam it into a rock. But your hook set is already basically light enough that you can start to feel if it's a fish or not, and then either lean into it harder or back out of it. And then you can, like, I actually, knock on wood, I don't think I've lost an A-rig in months.
I lost one with Eli.
The only time, the last time I lost one is because I lost it in 30 foot in rocks, and I could not get it out.
No, I had a backlash. It was windy.
I
probably should have retied at some point in time, but
that was 9 months ago. I just remembered when it was. That was 9 months ago.
No, I just did it the other day.
Yeah,
a couple weeks ago.
But for the most part, lure retriever gets them out, or just don't set the hook on rocks. It's great advice, right? Don't set the hook on rocks. Hook sets are free. Josh or JR says Megabass launcher. That's too high end for me, but I do not doubt that it's not a good rod.
Yeah.
I've heard that from multiple different sources.
Yeah.
Phoenix Feather is a great light rod. Not sure on that one, but I'm sure it is. Because if the launcher has the right bend, and it's the same person, then Phoenix probably got the right bend.
Yeah.
What's Getsy saying?
Didn't someone lose an A-rig at Berry? Then caught one on this. Oh yeah, I snapped. Remember when I snapped that A-rig off, and You caught it?
And I caught it. Yeah, that was pretty cool.
Yeah. Saved up.
I had already casted,
Yeah.
and then I'm reeling it in, and then he casts and it like hook snaps or slackline snaps.
Yeah.
Lands in the water, and I'm like, oh, and I kind of like extended my line to go out underneath where it landed, and then I just reeled in slow, and sure enough, it draped over my line, and I recovered his A-rig with my A-rig.
Tied it back on, kept fishing.
Yeah.
Caught fish with it.
Complete. That's actually a Instagram short.
Yeah.
That was totally dope.
Yeah, we were in
that was pretty cool.
Steel Canyon.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're like fishing the launch ramp too, catching fish in there.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of people leave the ramp when there's so many fish that are at the ramp.
Yeah.
JR also says, wish I could do that. I swing every time. Yeah, it is definitely a
you have to learn, like
it is a I don't want to say skill, but it is a trained thing to not keep swinging. Like you have to get in tune with it, right? Like you get that washout that happens, you know, you got to go. Like,
yeah,
the whole point of all of this is if you have that right rod, you are in contact of what this is doing in the water at all times, and you get familiar with it enough that you know what's happening on this. You can feel when it was a rock versus a fish. Am I 100%? Nah, not at all. There's definitely times that I thought it was a bite, swung on it, and it didn't move.
Yeah.
And then there's definitely times where I thought it was a rock, and then I realized it was moving and it was too late.
Yeah.
Like there's no perfect to it, but you can do the best you can. And the more you throw it, the more you get in tune for it.
Yeah. JR said control is skill 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's definitely having the sensitivity helps a lot.
Yeah.
To being able to be in tune with all that. I feel like we're missing something. What are we missing on that? Are we missing anything?
Maybe.
Oh,
What? You remember?
colors.
Yeah, I was gonna
We
say.
haven't even talked about colors yet. That's a quick one though.
Yeah, that's easy. I brought 3 of my colors. You should probably go get the other 2.
What am I missing? Okay.
So colors, tree pounders, yeah. But if you have a good pole, you could get those baits back. Gear ratio, both of us throw the Lewis Super Duties. I like the 200s. I do have 300s, but I do like the small compact 200s. They have that good drag on them. I think it's like 24-pound drag. Lewis Super Duties 24-pound drag, right?
20 pound.
20 pound?
It's 20 pound. We don't have it completely locked down.
No.
On my light rod, it's dang near locked down because the rod itself has enough give that even if that fish surges at the boat, that rod gives enough, and then I can feed it. Lets out. That one's actually pretty well locked down, and that's 20-pound drag. And then again, you have that fluorocarbon to get a little bit of stretch.
So for colors, we're talking 5.
So we got 5 colors total that we even throw or mix around with. And there's a reason for these 5 as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
We'll start with the light and then go darker. Sight Flash, which is just white with like a clearish belly. This is the bright. This is the mud water. There are times of the year where it's clear. They still want that white. Clear Lake, something like that, right? Will be the white. I haven't been throwing this as much recently.
I actually threw it this year at Berry when we had all the rains.
Yeah.
Up on the north side, the water was muddier. I was catching fish with it further south, but then I went up north just to play around, and the water is a little more muddy. I wasn't getting the reaction. I put one of those on my A-rig, like a tester, like in the middle, and immediately, boom, boom. So then I started putting a couple more on, right?
Yeah.
As a tester.
Yeah, start messing around with it. This is getting to be the time of the year at Clear Lake that this color starts working really well. And
that might be a color that's going to work really well this weekend too.
Yeah.
Because it's supposed to rain like an inch on Friday,
As
inch
long
on
as
Saturday.
If you're throwing shallow, the water muddies up, that kind of stuff. Now, your interim thing would be the next level, which is also what I would consider a brighter white. This is Ghost Rainbow.
Yeah.
This color I ran across by accidentally trying to buy a different color.
I've been throwing the Ghost Rainbow for a while.
Yeah, he's been throwing it. I don't. He throws so many different colors that I didn't have this in my thing. But this is that like stain water. When they want something brighter than these ones, but something a little more white.
Yeah.
It's that, right? So now if you're starting to notice, I'm talking about tones. I'm not talking about specific colors. So then next would be something a little more natural, which is rainbow shad. Right. So now I'm starting to go towards the natural side in rainbow shad. And this is pretty much any Clearwater lake.
Yeah.
You could throw this on. And then the next thing would be threadfin shad. This has a lot more flash to it.
That's the one you found in another place, right?
This is the one that I ran across in Tennessee.
Yeah.
I started throwing this in Tennessee and I went, man, this works really well. I wonder if I could do this back home. And then it just started working back home.
Yeah.
And then last would be cloudy days. Something where you want a dark bait and you go with bluegill flash. So if you notice, I don't care about the sparkle. I don't care about any of that stuff. I am purposely going through bright to dark. I almost have an order. I'm going from bright to dark. That's that's my whole point of that.
Well, you are colorblind, so.
And I don't think the fish can see color either. Yeah. So that's the whole point of the color scheme and the whole color theory of that is if they were eating threadfin, but all of a sudden they pulled off of it, try one darker, go to bluegill flash. Try one lighter, go to rainbow shad.
Yeah.
Okay, so now I have a reference point of which way I need to slide. If they were eating rainbow shad or threadfin, but I tried bluegill flash, it's not working, then I slide to Ghost Rainbow. I think it's Ghost Rainbow, right? Yeah, Ghost Rainbow. If Ghost Rainbow starts working, but they're not wholly committed, slide to the. You get what I'm saying? Like you're just moving this to slide up and down color spectrum, trying to figure out what tint they want.
Yeah.
I don't really care about color or flake. They're just tried baits for us, and that's what we're doing otherwise.
That's all I'm buying, those colors right there.
Yeah, I don't. I literally have like 20 of each. Well, probably not 20. Probably 15 of each size, 3/8, 3/3, and 2/8 of each of these colors, minus.
And I get all.
Minus this one. I don't carry very many of these. Just because it's a newer color to my lineup.
Yeah.
And I haven't stocked up yet.
Yeah.
We got asked gear ratio 7.5 to 1. I don't know if you answered that or not.
No, I just told him what reel. I like the Super Duties.
There are other baits. Skinny Dipper at Clear Lake is really, really good. Largo Shad. There's people who run the what's the G-Rats? Thin Swim?
Yeah, I think so.
The Thin Swim on there, like Kitech's not the answer for every answer.
No.
Why do I throw these? Same reason why I only carry 5 colors. Simplicity.
Yeah.
Are there days where throwing a non-fat swing impact would probably be a better bite? Absolutely. Am I going to carry the ton of plastics to find all that out?
No, your boat will get slower.
It's already slow enough. I'm losing like 4 miles an hour from all the crud that I put in it.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna keep it simple when it comes to that stuff. And then the other thing is if you're trying to force an A-rig bite and you change a whole bunch, like if I go through these colors and they don't bite, I can move on to a new bait.
Yeah.
If you have more options, you're gonna spend more time with a bait that may potentially not be working. Once you figure out a system, run with it. I'm hungry. Are you hungry?
I am hungry. Do you guys have any other questions for us on A-rigs or anything else?
Any final questions that's on there? I think hopefully Barry gets mud with this rain coming up. Barrios is only like 4 foot from the top.
With this rain,
4-ish
from what I looked at for what's going to be coming down, I 100% think it's going to be over the glory hole.
I hope, because the higher the rain, the higher the lake gets, the more water it needs to get higher.
Yeah.
Either way, it's not far from the top.
Yeah.
I would like a little bit more rain for Clear Lake before we get to February.
It's going to be this weekend.
I want
this weekend and next
Clear
week.
Lake to be at not over flood, just at the brim. I don't want to drive 5 miles an hour for the first quarter mile. I just want it to be full enough to be in the bushes.
Yeah.
The what do they call it? Selfishness. My selfishness.
Yeah.
I don't want to flood the houses either.
You are selfish.
But I don't want to drive 5 miles an hour for the first quarter mile.
Yeah.
Think about doing a live chat on lithium batteries. I actually have a live video. I'm not sure if I'm going to do it live or do a regular video, and it's going to be talking about lithium versus lead acid and kind of what people aren't talking about. Because the only people that talk about lithiums are sponsored by lithiums. And the only people, nobody else talks about batteries. And maybe YouTube suicide.
Yeah.
For sponsors. I don't really have a sponsor. Or we don't have a sponsor. Either way.
I do run.
He does have a lithium. But it's basically getting into why lithiums do what they do, and what's the advantages, disadvantages, all that kind of stuff. Because there's definitely some misinformation that I have run across that defies what batteries actually do and how they rate batteries.
Yeah.
So it's not a negative thing, because once you understand it, you can use it to your full advantage, and lithiums may be your answer. So it's not a bad thing. I think that's pretty much it. We're going to go grab some food.
Yeah, I'm hungry.
We're already running overtime anyways.
Yeah.
And, I got a chicken sandwich waiting for me.
JR said, hit him up tomorrow. He's got some fishing stuff for you.
He's got some goodies. I think that's it. If you have any questions, hit me up in the comments or hit me up on Instagram. If you have any ideas, I have to say this in the beginning. If you have any ideas for live videos besides like Paul just generously offered up, let me know on Instagram. Let me know in the comments. And until next time, I hope you get them.
You can just hold your